9 years it's been since I was first invited by Tomasz to cooperate, and it's a big pleasure. And 9 years ago, everything seemed simple. Nowadays, nothing seems to be simple. We are living in a so-called, let's say, VUCA environment. Everything changes. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. You never can say this is red and this is black. Everything changes now. And this last speech by Mr. Felsinger gives really some thinking. Are we here in Europe, instead of rebuilding the house, just repainting its chimney? Mr. Felsinger, this is a question to you. Are we just repainting the chimney and not acting fast enough? And please try to be short. It's a yes and no question.
Obviously, my answer is
so it's just a certain.
obviously, no, we need more speed. And the problem is we are now 28 members. So it's difficult to find a consensus among 28 members. So the only way to accelerate the decision process, we are facing inside our association the same problem, because we are based on a consensus. So we need to build a consensus. And the way to achieve a consensus is to be convinced that Europe is a solution and not a problem. Sometimes it can generate problems, but it is a solution.
Okay, but are we acting fast enough?
No.
No. Okay, and this, everything seems simple. It was nice and rosy world. Then the financial crisis happened. Then Fukushima happened. Then shale gas came. Everything is new. There is China. And we are not acting fast enough. Mr. Omerzel, Mr. Minister, you come from the business environment, now you're a politician. And you have all the necessary expertise to tell us where we will be in 20 years.
Well, thank you very much for this question.
You're welcome, Mr. Omerzel.
Thank you very much. According to this first question, maybe I refer first to that one. I believe that Europe did build a new house, but the main question is that this house is maybe too big and maybe too expensive for us, especially according to renewables. And I believe we must act fast on this field. I mean, renewables are good, but we must choose something better than photovoltaics. And this is something that is a fact and that is here, also for Slovenia and Germany. I mean, we have the shim here for next 10 years, not so bad one as the German one, but we still have to pay 150 millions in next 10 years. So I know where we will be in next 10 years for this part, but when we're speaking, let's say, future 20 for Slovenia and Slovenia inside Europe, I believe that hydropower plants is the answer, what we must do according to renewables, and of course interconnection with the European market.
Okay, hydropower plants, thank you very much. But listen, just one more question, or two maybe. Do we have a problem with time and money?
Yeah, there's always a problem of time and money, of course, but...
we need time and money, right, in Europe?
I believe that when we're speaking about money in this sector, we do not have a problem. I believe that investments can be done, and also time, I believe, is something we can compare.
Can you describe, I'm a journalist after all, and can you describe your last 2 days as a minister? I mean, you had a difficult day yesterday, and now I hope you're enjoying this conference and enjoying this conversation. But some things are going on. Can you tell us what's going on?
Well, when you're asking about my work day, you know that we joined 4 ministries into one. So I'm responsible for spatial planning from transportation, energy, and also for infrastructure. So whatever you see in Slovenia is basically under my ressort. And I start at 6 o'clock and I finish at approximately 10 or 12 in the afternoon. So.
Yeah, but You woke up today, you came to Porto Roche, and I'm sure that you received some news of what's going on in Ljubljana at the moment.
I must admit that I do not know where are you aiming.
Can please somebody from the audience help me? Or is it going to be my duty? Okay, if you don't know, I think it'll be a difficult day for you. And please enjoy this conference as long as you can.
I will turn off my mobile, okay.
You turned off your mobile. Okay, very good. Okay, now, you know, this debate about having enough time, about where is Europe going, about the competitiveness of Europe, especially towards the United States. Mike, you're from the United States. You know, how would you comment Mr. Felsinger's speech? I mean, this was quite extraordinary, his speech, and we do seem to have some problems. And you were so inspirational.
I just wanted to make sure I heard the whole question.
Would you like me to repeat the whole question?
No. I enjoy it. First of all, with respect to a global carbon charge, I would absolutely support a global carbon charge, because currently what we are doing is we're not only advantaging our own industries with respect to the cost of energy with shale gas, we are dumping our coal onto the European markets. And I personally think it's unconscionable. However, the no regrets policy, and I wanted to point out something that was mentioned earlier about the demand response and the earnings in demand response, and basically the structure that you're suggesting for the demand response markets, quite interesting. Basically, that's a strategic reserves demand response markets, which will be less expensive for Europe as a whole, for the industrial sector. So if you look at a really good energy efficiency certificate market coupled with a strategic reserves demand response market, United States, it's a no regrets policy for Europe. The United States industrial sector has been reducing their energy costs simply through participating in demand response. I think it's a remarkable achievement. I think it's something that Europe can implement here, and I think that Europe can go further to advantage the most efficient players with an effective, fungible, tradable energy efficiency market, from my perspective.
You know, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 years ago, we all talked about markets. And it was all about deregulation. Everything seemed to have been quite simple. It was all clear. We talked about unbundling, decoupling, blah, 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 and all that. This all seems to be gone. Seems to be gone. Mr. Hesselink, you wanted to respond to that. Please.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think it's gone. I mean, I think it's still there and it's very important. It's one of the basic foundations that we have in the current design of the house, if you wish, that we think unbundling and market functioning are very important. However, the debate may have shifted. I think we're now debating more different things when it comes to renewables, capacity markets, demand response. Debate has shifted, but I think people almost take for granted that within Europe you will have TPA, you will have unbundling, and you should have them.
Okay, let me put it this way, and I'll try to be very blunt. You work, I'm oversimplifying now, you work for the, let's say, the regulator of the regulators. Okay? No.
I don't think they would like this qualification.
Yeah, but yeah. Can you, from your perspective as a regulator of the regulators, comment my statement? Which is not my statement, it is just a statement. Energiewende in Germany was a mistake.
I mean, Energiewende is a political decision. I'm not here to comment on political decisions, unfortunately.
No, okay.
But we have to
you-
deal with the consequences. I mean, it's up to us from the regulatory point of view. We have to take whatever politicians decide. They have a political mandate. We don't have a political mandate. They will decide, and we have to make sure the market functions as good as possible.
So, Mr. Omerzeel, you're a politician. Was Energiewende a mistake? And don't tell me you cannot comment on Germany. Everybody does that nowadays.
I really do not want to comment on Germany.
So what you're actually saying is that Energiewende was a mistake.
Actually, I must be frankly speaking, I do not know about that. For me, yes, I am a politician today, that's true, but
Are you enjoying your function?
of course I am. It's quite multidisciplinary and I enjoy it, but it is really hard to put comments on something like that.
Okay, and who is the only person who can comment freely here? The hand rose up. Was Energiewende a mistake? Please listen carefully now.
Well, first I have to say that I attended the conference where MEP Royal said this. So it was in Berlin. It was 2-3 weeks ago. We have to make a distinction between the principle of Energiewende, meaning changing an energy system, which is not just saying we want more renewables. Actually, there was a structural decision taken by the German government to stop nuclear energy in Germany. What was clearly a mistake is that Germany took this decision alone, without talking to anyone, without making sure that in case there would be supply problems, its neighbors would be in a situation to respond. So this was a mistake. The political decision I will not comment because this is an energy mix choice. And by the way, it's fortunate that since the future is unpredictable by nature, there is a huge diversity among European countries, about European members, about choices. Some countries choose gas, some countries choose wind, some countries choose nuclear, some countries choose coal. And this is a big advantage. The worst would be if we would have only one source of energy and we make the wrong choice, because then it would be extremely difficult. So, but the choice I will not comment, but the way it was done, yes. Meaning this analysis on the forecast of fossil fuel prices, this necessity to update our energy and climate policy was not done. It was not done at European level. It was not done by Germany when Germany took this decision. And so it means that the total cost of what was implemented under the wording of Energiewende was not anticipated. It is the role of governments, and as it is a role for industry, to anticipate the cost evolution. You need to make budgets. You need to... It's actually seen from industry. It was amazing to see governments in some countries discovering suddenly the impact of the debt regarding support to renewables 2-3 years later. And suddenly to take abrupt decisions. I mean, Spain suddenly discovered that, wow, we have created a huge debt to finance solar and wind. And now from one day to the next one, we stop everything, which is killing the industry of renewables. So it's not good for the country. It's not good for the consumers. It's not good even for the industry of renewables. So what we need is more anticipation, and this in Germany was not done enough, and this can happen even in Germany.
We don't seem to have a plan overall in Europe. I mean, there is some plan. The EU is taking some action, but after all, as we see it now, and from my point of view, and I'm not 100% expert as you people are, but it seems that we are just left here and waiting for something to happen. And I don't think that things are going to happen just like that. More action, much more action.
To be positive, I think there is one positive thing about the crisis which Europe has been facing now since several months and years, is that we are no longer in a situation where we can afford not to anticipate and not to react quickly. Of course, the difference is there are huge differences between various countries, but even Germany, which is the most economically healthy country in Europe, will completely revise its support to energy sources in 2014, will use 2014 to take its decisions regarding potential capacity mechanisms, which are supposed to start January 1st, 2015, if they are implemented. I think this time they will clearly take a more European perspective, and I think this is now also more and more taken into account by more and more countries. And Germany should not be blamed for taking this unilateral decision to stop its nuclear power plants from one day to the other without talking to anybody else. When Belgium took the decision, because Belgium criticized Germany, because the prices in Belgium increased because of the German decision. But when Belgium took the decision to stop 2 nuclear power plants, somebody asked, did you tell your neighbors? And the answer was, well, no. So it's always easy to criticize the others, but what we need to be convinced now is before taking structural decisions, we must take a more and more European view.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Now, Mr. Morzel stated that for Slovenia, the right solution, and the only sensible solution would be to invest into hydropower plants, water. That's right. Did I understand you correctly?
When speaking about renewables.
Speaking about renewables, of course. Now, you know, when we try to do something in Slovenia, and I don't think it's only a Slovenian question, it's a European one, nothing seems to be, we don't seem to be able to do something quickly, especially in Slovenia. Now, we have been talking about the new power plants for I don't know how many years, and there are always some civil initiatives that tell us, yeah, you're going to destroy that wildlife, this is going to happen, and nothing seems to go forward. Even if we had the money, and maybe we do have the money, we do have some investors, I mean, it is just impossible. And this is a question for you, Mr. Minister, and for the regulator of the regulators.
Thank you very much for that question. Yes, I believe that in the past this was actually the truth. What I'm quite happy about is that basically main issues when we're speaking about spatial planning and putting these objects into this space, the main issue here was for me when I started as a minister, Nature 2000. You probably all know the problems that are heading along with this situation. But I must say that we are really working a lot of changing law regulations and complete processes of this implementation. And I believe that in the future we are going to be able to be fast, especially to be able to deliver what is necessary to our investors.
With what degree of certainty can you say this? 80%, 70, 90?
I'm 100% sure about that.
Please, everybody write this down. 100% sure.
Yeah. I'm 100% sure about that because if you would be covering what we are doing right now, we have complete conceptual changes of complete process of spatial planning on tomorrow in the government, and we are really working a lot on that field. And yes, I'm 100% sure that we will be able to achieve that.
Okay, thank you very much. I wish you all the best.
Thanks.
Regulator of the regulators. How can you please everybody?
Oh, we don't, and we're not trying to.
No, I mean, we are, this is not you personally, but how do you please everybody in a society?
Again, we don't. What we try to do is to be open to everybody's contribution, to listen to them and to take them into account. But quite often there are conflicting views, and we will not be able to reconcile them always. So sometimes some people will be disappointed by certain actions that we propose, certain decisions that will be taken, which will not always suit their own interests. But that's part of the game.
Could we agree that we in Europe, and also in Slovenia, of course, have a problem with leadership? Is it a problem with clear vision and normal leadership? Do we lack those skills? And this is a question for you. Now, you are a theoretician. You should know. Do we in Europe have a problem with leadership?
If there's a problem with leadership here, it is not limited to here.
So does the whole world have a problem with leadership except China?
What I do think that we have a problem of walking and chewing gum at the same time, consistently. And by that I mean we aren't able to take a look at the things that we can achieve cost effectively today and implement them and take some of the more complex challenges and say there's a broader stakeholder perspective and process for those more complex challenges. So we can't implement a 20% energy efficiency portfolio standard today, even though that's less expensive than even United States shale gas development. Can we take a look? Do we have the willpower to take those 200 to 500 years of natural gas resources and recognize that natural gas is and should remain a peak fuel, not a base load fuel, and that we have the willpower as a society, as humanity, to basically leave the largest portion of those resources in the ground.
So we do have a problem with leadership.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Now, and this is a question I'm going to ask Mr. Felsinger just in a moment, but one question before that. You know, how long, you said a similar situation to today's one will last for the next 20 years, so I understood. Now, energy bills go up, but the energy is cheaper. We pay more for a cheaper thing. I mean, you said 20 years, but is this sustainable? Please hand him over the microphone.
I said it we always need to look at things in a relative way, meaning by comparison. So today, US is becoming the reference price for energy, meaning that when we talk about energy, for Europe, we need to compare with US. And because, for instance, industries who are competing with each other, they have to base their cost structure on the same energy price. If not, you cannot sell, you cannot produce, you cannot manufacture. So, US is setting the difference. So if we take this reference, what it means is that the subsidies which are already committed for 20 years will not disappear because we are feed-in tariffs. For instance, let's take a concrete example. The price of energy of electricity, let's say, is 35 euro per megawatt hour in US. It's maybe on average 45 on the market in Europe, plus depending on the countries, 20 to 50, 60 euro per megawatt hour additional cost. These additional costs, because they are guaranteed to the investors who invested very expensive renewables because they were not mature at the beginning, these costs, we cannot say, we as industry cannot say, no, government should not take the decision to say we ignore our past contracts and we stop. No, I mean, a contract is a contract. You would destroy investors' confidence if governments would take measures which are retroactive. This cannot be done, which means that the costs which have been committed are there. And they will last because the energy price globally will not increase. So yes, this handicap will remain. the guidance from the Commission on State Aid Intervention in Electricity, which were issued, will hopefully, if followed by the member states, but I'm sure because it's good sense, they will be implemented, will limit adding new burdens. And this way, hopefully, we can keep energy prices at an acceptable level for industry and complete it by additional support which recognizes, for instance, the value of base load consumption or flexible consumption via demand-side response, and so that we will find ways to hopefully survive and become more competitive.
Okay, but just to illustrate this question, can an energy-intensive plant, industrial plant, for instance, aluminium producer, something like that, survive in the long run, in Slovenia, for instance? What do you think?
Well, if you associate an aluminum plant to the hydropower plant which you are going to build, and you make a win-win, you set up a win-win deal via a long-term agreement between the hydro plant and the aluminum factory, yes, it can work. And not only it can work, but it will be much more climate efficient than having this aluminum plant being set up in China. I think we have a very concrete example. Manufacturing in Europe is actually climate action. There is no opposition between climate policy and industrial policy. Actually, European industrial policy is helping the climate, and there are very concrete examples. Well, China wanted to have its own car industry. So it decided that by 2010, China would produce 50% of the world's steel consumption. Because there is no problem of leadership, as you mentioned, in China.
Everything is clear and transparent.
They did it. And it's a fact that today China does produce 50% of the steel world production. China wants to have an airplane industry in the future, its own industry. For this, you need aluminum. So China decided that by 2015, they will produce 50% of the world production of aluminum. We know, because the plants are under construction, that this will be done. So by 2015, China will produce 50% of the total world aluminum production. What is the energy source used to produce this aluminum? These aluminum plants are backed by coal-fired power plants. And because of the energy intensity of aluminum, the total power production dedicated to aluminum in China based on coal will be equivalent to the total electricity generation of Italy in 2015. So when we favor carbon leakage by inappropriate measures in Europe, actually we create a climate problem elsewhere, and this is not the best solution. What we need is to produce energy, and to manufacture in Europe, because we have among the highest energy efficiency standards, and also because we are indeed worrying about climate and we are efficient.
Okay, thank you. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we have time for 2 questions. Please, the word can be yours, a comment, a question. Do not hesitate, be open. If you're not doing it, I will have to go on working. I would like to delegate some of my work to you. And there's the gentleman with the yellow tie.
Stephen Woodhouse from Poiri. We've just done quite a... Can you hear me?
It's fine, it's fine.
Yeah. Stephen Woodhouse from Poiri, and we've just done quite a lot of work looking at the future direction of energy policy and whether we actually continue to live in markets with a strong CO2 regime, or whether we continue down the route of supported technologies forever and we effectively accept re-regulation. But I'm just curious about the suggestion that the problem here is leadership. We live in free societies with markets, and I think that gives us the right to make mistakes. I don't think if you look at recent history, we find that a directed economy is the route to economic salvation. So I'm a little bit curious that we think that we're suggesting that's the answer. What we need is a proper, credible global carbon policy. Energy actually is not expensive, energy is cheap. We've gone from $10 oil to $100 oil in my recent lifetime, at all of yours, and the world didn't stop turning. The problem is if our oil is $10 and somebody else is 100, or the other, well, that would be okay, but the other way around would be a problem. So the focus needs to be on dealing with the credibility gap on the carbon regime. You can't blame 28 European leaders for not coming to an immediate consensus. The barrier to that is that we're not building in the compensation mechanisms. So decarbonisation will cost Poland very dearly. Nobody disputes that. Expecting them to suddenly agree with us that we should be decarbonising without dealing with compensation mechanisms is where the real problem lies.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Would you like anybody to comment?
How are we dealing with the carbon credibility gap? That's the leadership.
Okay, who would you like to comment?
I guess it's a politician's question.
Politician.
I hope you all agree that life of a politician is not an easy one, right? But let me maybe start with this, I would say, teaser about leadership. I do not think that we do have a problem about leadership. What maybe we do or we did have a problem is about making decisions. I must say I was quite positively surprised, and I would say positive, very extremely positive experience for me. Few weeks ago, Professor David McKay was visiting Slovenia, and what should be also the leadership and the base idea also for us politicians to make decisions are numbers. So this is what maybe in the past was or was not taken into consideration strong enough, that basically when we are preparing a vision where we are speaking about framework that we are going to be in the future, everything must be based on numbers, and this should be the key issue for the future.
Okay.
Very briefly, I think, and I've heard talk of exemptions, and I've heard talk of compensation, and I recognize they are sometimes necessary. I just urge caution, because what you do is when you do apply them inappropriately with a lack of intelligence, you just delay the growth, and you delay those specific industries and those specific countries. You delay their growth, and you allow them to keep living in the past. So recognize that it is needed, but recognize also that it is a dangerous thing to apply.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there another question from the audience or a comment? We have time for one more. No, don't tell me that I'm not for democracy. I gave you the chance. And the last question here, now. And please, dear gentlemen, decide who is going to provide an answer to this one. You know, I don't know where I read it. It was a quote that Europe without industry, and we are losing competitiveness also due to high prices, high bills of energy, is going to become the museum of the world. You know all that. I cannot remember whose quote it is, but never mind. Is this going to happen, that Europe is to become only a museum for the whole world? Who would like to provide an answer? And this is the final question. Look, you want a democracy. This is what you get. Okay.
Mike, you landed in Venice, so you should talk about it.
Okay. And then Mr. Felsinger. Okay.
I'll be brief, and then others will talk. I think it's a great opportunity. I think that in some ways there will be certain things that will be in the past, certain industries that will be in the past, and certain industries that will co-locate with a hydro generation plant and become the industry of the future. But as well, I think it's Europe's opportunity to create the industry of the future beyond renewables. And I think that can be a job generator and a surplus generator as well for Europe.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, Mr. Felsinger, you have the final word now. And it's a great responsibility.
I don't know if it will be the final one, but I think it's an important one to answer to the remark also from Poiri. Actually, I think what we miss in Europe to build our future is trust in engineers. I mean, the power system, because electricity cannot be stored or not easily stored, requires technical knowledge. The problem with politicians is that today I'm a lobbyist, but I was trained as an engineer. And I'm always surprised when I speak to politicians that actually what I say is weighted in a way, well, is the FIAC reliable? What does your electric say? What does energy say? What do the Greens say? Etc., etc. And so the decision, very democratically, will be taken by weighing several inputs in different ways. The problem is that this process does not deliver the optimum economical solution. Because sometimes there is technical reality. I mean, when you say, okay, I set up a system to promote renewables, but I don't care whether somebody in Berlin will get a feed-in tariff which is 3 times higher than the one in Athens, because I know this is necessary, because in Athens there is much more sun, so it will be much more profitable. And I don't care about energy efficiency because it's a political decision. So when we do this, okay, we could say it's democracy, but at the same time it's totally inefficient. So we need to take into account technical reality when taking decisions. There are lots of examples where so-called experts, technical experts, do not always promote the good solution. But
for instance, a physicist becoming the Chancellor of Germany.
I will not be specific, but really it's important, and it's important for Europe's future. We will not compete on low added value products, I agree. So we really need to restore an educational system where also people get some technical expertise and are able to rely on scientific proof. I think this is extremely important for the future.
Basically, what you're saying is that politicians should learn more mathematics. Basically.
Everyone has a role to play. But the thing is, today, I'm afraid that at least in the countries where I stay, and I say in many European countries, people you watch at the TV usually do not represent the technological and scientific world, while this would be an essential contribution to our future.